My least favorite part about collaborating with startups is what?
It is the lack of professionalism. I know everybody tries their best to get their job done, but sometimes if just the basics are missing, that combined with an attitude, makes it sometimes pretty hard.
Innovation Rockstars.
Innovation Rockstars.
In this episode, we welcome Ronja Stoffregen, Head of Global Startup Management at DB Schenker.
Hi, and welcome back to Innovation Rockstars. My name is Chris Murod, as always, and in this episode, I am truly excited to welcome Ronja Stoffregen. A few words about Ronja. So she is currently the Head of Global Startup Management at the DB Schenker. She's also, what I learned from her socials, she's a co-author and lecturer for the study program Digital Business at the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management. And I found two hashtags. Number one is hashtag power of nice. Second one, hashtag be bold. So I'll make sure to include also a question about this. But Ronja, first of all, thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for today.
All right. So as always, we start straight away with a 60 seconds introduction sprint. The idea of this is really to have you, 60 seconds about you, your career, and also the current role. So I do have a digital stopwatch. We're going to add this in the post-production. So for the next 60 seconds, Ronja, the stage is all yours. Let's go.
All right. Well, morning and greetings from Hamburg. So the last 2 years, I've been heading the global startup activities for DB Schenker. And here I'm every day inspired by collaborating with my team with a goal to push new innovative solutions into the core organization. As a side hobby and privileged hobby, I call it, pursuing my PhD in the topic about when and how startups pivot their business model. So always happy to discuss further on that topic. And then a little fun fact, perhaps, before we deep dive into our work too. Since 2017, when I graduated from my master's in Copenhagen, I live in Hamburg, yet I never had a job here. So that's just, I think, enough to say. And when it's warm, higher than 15 degrees, I like to take a tour on my motorcycle. That's it. Hi, everyone.
Oh, motorcycle. Didn't know that. That's pretty cool. All right, now let's get to know just a little better. And to do that, I have 3 sentence starters. Ronja, and I would like to ask you to complete those sentence starters. So the first one is like this. In my journey, my greatest source of inspiration has been so far?
This is a tough question, and sometimes you want to hear people, etc. But I'm going to go with passion, because I had a privilege to actually find passion in the work I do. And once you had it at one stage or project, then you're missing something when you don't have it anymore. So as soon as I have passion in my work, it just felt like I want to get things done, and I never watch the clock again. So I would go with passion and purpose.
Beautiful answer. Okay, that's fair. Number 2, my least favorite part about collaborating with startups is what?
To me, it is the lack of professionalism. Simply because I know that there are a bunch of really brilliant founders, etc., but yet sometimes I'm missing the basics, and that gets frustrating because I know everybody tries their best to get their job done, but sometimes if just the basics are missing, that combined with an attitude, makes it sometimes pretty hard.
That is very candid. Okay, cool. And number 3, if I could give one piece of advice to startups looking to collaborate with larger companies, except for being more professional, what would it be?
To me, it is when I'm talking to startups and I can tell that, one, they're not too invested in actually understanding the product or problem or solution or process we're having. Then I truly can say, well, you guys need to better understand the problem. You need to understand your audience. And it starts by startups coming over and say, hey, we have great oat milk for train rides. And I say, well, that's great. Please let me know if you if you got it inserted into the bistro, but DB Schenker is not part of the personal train rides. So that's just one extent, right? But to me, it's really know your problem and make sure that you're actually solving a problem.
Yeah. So in a not so nice way, getting their shit together before they actually contact you. That's a thing. Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yes, but of course, one of your hashtags is hashtag power of nice. So you would probably wouldn't say the same sentence as I do, but also be bold. So I found both of them on your LinkedIn profile. And how has that philosophy impacted your professional career?
Well, power of nice is pretty straightforward, I would say. Yet there's a more depth to it. So first of all, let's take it for how I want to collaborate with my colleagues, with startups, with people, my stakeholder in my ecosystem. I want to make sure that there's a candid yet open, but also valuable part of communication, because we all just do this because we want to do it, not because we have to do it. So this is kind of power of nice when you look at it from the basics. But then also, and I don't want to deep dive into this topic, but then being a young professional woman who kind of nailed up many of things already in her career, and also this goes also in my private life, right? It is sometimes you're standing in front of those persons, I'm not gonna persona them, where you just know, like, what the fuck, this is not respectful. This is not the way I want to be treated. This is not the way I want to handle life. And this can be just going in a grocery store. This can go in a cafe. This can also be in a work environment. And so here with a bunch of women, kind of like similar to my profile with whom I studied, etc., we always say, well, if they go low, we go high. So taking on the high note, and kind of, I'm a quote person. So also like power of nice, and then kill them with kindness. So that's why if they have some issues with themselves, we rather focus on our end and not go down the river. So that's why I say power of nice. That's just kind of how I want to, be my own, walk around in my own life. And then be bold is simply, it started actually in the pandemic when I was still working at the company Builder we founded in 2018, and I was like hitting the pandemic. We had big projects and a lot of things just went unexpectedly south. I think for many companies it did, especially when you're in an innovation boutique. And ultimately, I realized that every day I have to stand up. Every day I want to be lead by example and be there for my clients, but also for my team and for myself. And then I just started to say, okay, be bold, because you got this. This is just, a short strength of time, and then it'll pass. And ultimately, it just kept by it. And I love the words. They're on top of my bed in glitter mermaid tape. So I see them every day when I wake up. And I encourage everyone close and far to just be bold and stand up for yourself.
Yeah, I like that you are very clear about this, because this makes it, kind of also easy working with you. And at the same time, everybody knows what to expect. So I like the clarity that you're putting into this. Now let's use the same clarity and dive into venture clienting. Venture clienting, Ronja, is an emerging, but for some, even already established concept. Let's start at the very beginnings, maybe. Can you explain in, just simple terms, few words, few sentences, what venture clienting actually means, and also how DB Schenker has adopted this approach over time?
Yes, absolutely. And it's one of my favorite topics. So let's get started. Well, first of all, venture clienting, as the name states, it is our aim to become a client of a venture. Yet the name has been, let's say, used just within the last 1 or 2 years. I would say many corporates and SMEs have been doing the activities that lie behind it for a very longer time than that, because ultimately it's just a new supplier that may be more on the riskier side, simply because it's still a young company. With that, so since 2016, DB Schenker has a centralized group of people focusing on collaborating with startups. And it started by also testing out some things. So my the Daria who did my job previously, she had a lot of greenfield approach, did some investments, for instance, Volocopter, understand, okay, do we need some new business modeling, etc. And so it was, let's say, a good mixture of corporate venturing. And throughout the years, it just became more professional every year with every project. And so now in the game for 7 years, we have a clear handbook, clear strategy, structure, process, governance model, clear KPIs, clear, this is it, this is like KO criteria. So I would say by now it is a smooth process where we're more and more also gaining that we're not just, the cool kids in white shoes, but we're actually, our aim is to create impact for the organization and help them to become the company they want to be.
And how can you actually, or how are you trying to ensure exactly that pilots or the projects you do just don't remain, you said cool projects or cool things, but actually make a real difference?
In simple terms, it all comes down to one number. It's either money saved or new revenue generated. So basically, all of our projects can be seen in one number. Yet this is quite hard to do, right? Because if you, for instance, let's talk about the exoskeleton, it helps us to decrease accidents in warehouses simply by helping people to pull up packages, etc. So it's like something that you wear on your body and then you would help you carry the load. How do you measure that? At the end of the day, you have to make some assumptions about sickness days and about days that they actually would have been sick otherwise by implementing the solution. Yet it is still pretty vague. So that's why some of the solutions, it's very, very easy to just put a number and price tag on it, and then we know when it amortized. But other projects are more on the softer side, and here it's more difficult to actually put a number on it.
But the exoskeleton is a very good example because, sure, you could come up with some financial metrics, but ultimately this is directly contributing to employee health and safety, which probably is one, if maybe not the most concern, especially for those people, right? So yes, I agree. This is super important, but at the same time, you could of course come up with some measurements on, sick days, and then how much money do you lose for, because of the sick days and the things. But the real issue that's solving is, for the people, for the employees, and making sure they're safe and sound and have less injuries, which is maybe even more important than money. So yeah, it's tough for those projects, but they have a tremendously high impact. But maybe the financials are then just second order importance. Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. And I think it's also part of our job to make sure it is not just done to one number. So obviously, it is important that you're prepared, that you have some statistics and numbers so that you can go also on, hard times. And it's sure that innovation is usually one of the first departments being closed down when things get tough. And so then it definitely helps to have some actual numbers. Yet for us, we have many different KPIs how we measure our success, also in terms of operational, customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction. So those numbers are definitely more soft, but yet, I think it's good and important that we care about those topics too, and not just on the revenue itself. So yeah, I agree.
Absolutely, and from those KPIs, you certainly can read if you're, making an impact, and if this is going in the right direction, or if it just, are if they remain some cool pet projects where you might have great technology at hand, but it might, it doesn't do any impact or any difference to the organization. Do you have any other real-world examples of projects you can share? How the venture clienting and maybe also the projects or the ventures you're working with have made a tangible difference at DB Schenker?
Yes, I'm just going to share with you a couple of projects we're currently piloting, or we currently just put into our standard operations, just so you get also a understanding of how wide the spectrum is. So for instance, which has been also big in the news, is everything when it comes to volocopter, right? So here for us, it's still interesting, what is going to be our use case? Yet for us, it's also important to better understand, okay, where and how does this technology go, so that we can truly understand, is this the potential new business unit or not? All right, then let's continue. Another big topic, a very successful company, Fernride. Here, although they do not focus on use cases that are particularly relevant for us right now in contract logistics, still we do see it was really good to do a pilot with Fernride to understand how this technology works. So for everybody who doesn't know Fernride, it's basically doing truck driving from remote. So simply, there's a big shortage for truck drivers for everybody. For us, the average age for European truck drivers is 58. So I know we all like to order from Amazon, but we also need people who drive it home or drive it to the next warehouse. And that is why there's a huge demand, not just because of the sake of the technology, but actually because of the shortage of the driver. And so for us, it's important everywhere where we can decrease the amount of drivers needed, where and how we can implement that with new technologies. So that's why we did learn a lot from our pilot here in the Netherlands. I mean, others, for instance, talk about Flip, very successful in the last years. Flip is at the end of the day, it's our, let's say, mobile app for blue-collar workers. And in that app, you can share best practices. You can share, okay, this was an accident, so can somebody please help us? But you can also share like fun things. For instance, hey, there's cake left over, come around and, share it. But because before there was no, let's say, platform, how they would communicate other than, a blackboard. And so ever since our blue collars have mobile devices, it gave us a lot new opportunities to also make use of that. And what else? I mean, we try around with Metaverse, we try around with video creation platforms for our sales and marketing colleagues. There are a bunch of use cases that do not have a straight direct relationship to logistics too. Yep. So, I mean, we're well aware there's a lot going on in procurement, in legal, in marketing, in people in organization or former human resources. And so yet I wouldn't say those are our priorities. We still every now and then find very relevant problems and then scout solutions in that field. So that's my 2 cents for that.
And there is many more to come. I have to say we do record this session in October 2023. And, at this time, one of the most powerful language models, which is GPT-4, just learned vision, right? So it now can basically understand, if you give it a picture, this large language model can actually read that picture and also give recommendations on what to do. So if something is broken, a large language model now can be trained to give you a recommendation and maybe even a step-by-step approach on how to actually fix things or how to create stuff, how to build stuff. And this also might be a very interesting avenue going forward. Again, if we listen to this podcast in 1 year from now, this is probably just, as a standard, but it's new right now in October 2023. So I'm pretty sure these kind of technological advancements surely will unlock new use cases and also, new venture collaborations in that case. But tell me a little bit more about your journey to actually adopt the venture clienting discipline. I mean, when we talked prior to this recording, we talked about, from a push and pull perspective. You shifted this over the years, and this certainly also influence DB Schenker's relationship with partners and clients. So can you also maybe share some of the learnings, the journey, the learnings, and then also some, mistakes and how you did course correct over time?
Yes. So when I joined in 2021, there were already a bunch of successful solutions in standard operations. And I think the team up until this point for the first 5 years, truly established and implemented the activities. With that, then no efficiency or professionalism wouldn't have been possible. And I guess it's kind of coming from the nature of doing 5 years of consultancy, that the first thing you usually do is looking at the processes and also making sure that if there's coming a shortage, that you're ready to have the right arguments at hand. And so to me, it was important that we moved a little bit from, let's say, just the matchmaking, so understanding ourselves as the entry gate, towards truly creating impact, that we create and capture value for the organization. With that, I'm not saying it wasn't this case before, but let's just say it was more random, and now we prioritize and focus our steps forwards a little bit more focused. And so with that, to me, it was important that talking about the innovator's dilemma from the theory background, it is important to have an innovation department that tackles that problem. Innovator's dilemma in just a sentence means that you're too busy with your daily operations, that you do not have the capacity nor the capacity nor the interest to actually challenge your products and processes to come up with new solutions. Yep. And so that's why I'm convinced it is our job as the innovation department to get that job done and inspire, but also challenge and also finger point, where are potentials for automation and digitalization. And that is basically what we do. And this basically comes down to moving from a push approach, where we would push technologies into the organization. Yet I still believe it is valid, especially when you're beginning of a venture client unit, to also have some, success pilots that help people understand and appreciate your work. But long-term perspective, if you truly want to help the organization, not just for the sake of doing pilots, but actually for the sake of, innovating and automating the products and processes, then you actually have to solve a problem. You have to solve a problem that's not just in one region, not just in branch Hanover or Hildesheim, but maybe even scalable, so that you can, once you implemented a solution, can have a roadmap to scale that solution on a global scale. And that is why we moved our process in the terms that we still do push. So every startup is happy to, and we'll welcome every startup to approach us and, show us the pain point they're having. And then we still can find together use cases. But I would just say our focus has shifted towards identifying pain points with the business and functional units, and then doing a scouting for those problems, for those solutions that are already in the market, to actually then propose those, let's say, mitigation options to our colleagues in the company.
I think, as you mentioned, thinking of this as a hybrid approach to whatever kind of degree on push and pull side is probably sounds healthy to me, because of course, if you 100% only focus on pulling problems from the business and maybe also from their customers, you might just not see the bigger picture, the entire thing. I mean, they're so deep into the problems and the operative and the tactical side of the business, which is their job for most of the cases. Some unconventional solutions to existing problems, or maybe problems that are foreseen to arise in the future, they wouldn't be solved by only asking, what are your problems? How can we solve them? But of course, the relevance, and it's much more hands-on if you have the pull approach and get people from the business to also appreciate the work, because you really solve a problem again for them, for the clients, whomever. I totally see why you go from push to pull, and then maybe also have some hybridity baked into this approach. It just makes perfect sense for the value you can add to the organization. But interesting to hear. What would you say was your biggest mistake?
There are a bunch. I would say my biggest mistake is patience. So I'm not, by nature, not really a patient person, and I've been pushing a lot of things when I came coming from a word that is pretty speedy, where I basically have my own rules, and then coming into an environment that once you get things started, it's even higher. There's a higher return and there's a higher leverage. But I believe I did a fantastic job running into other people's advocates and practices, challenging a lot. And I learned to, sometimes I don't have to win every battle, and let's just accept certain things the way they are. I think it's a pretty corporate thing to do. But I think sometimes I had to understand that it makes also sense that it works this way. If that makes sense to the audience. I think everybody who did work inside of the corporate, they know what I mean. So even though sometimes you're thinking yourself, well, why do we have to align this and why do we have to that? At the end, it actually makes perfectly sense because the people actually know what they're doing, and they've been doing it for a longer time. And so, yeah, I would say sometimes accepting the process and being patient is one of the mistakes. But then at the same time, I also like to challenge the status quo. So I'm not sure if it's a real mistake.
Well, yeah, I agree, but I'm also still working hard on my patience levels, so I'm definitely in the same boat. Okay, before we move to the future, Ronja, I would like to play a quick game. The quick game is called Rapid Fire Round. This is super simple. It goes like this. I do ask a question, and the key of this is that you answer fast. So don't overthink. I know you're not overthinking anything, but speed is key in that. Let's go for this. 3 questions. Number 1, if DB Schenker was a vehicle, what would it be?
A super truck that can also go in the water and fly if it needs to, while organizing itself.
Oh, mm-hmm. That's
you actually wanted to hear a brand, right? But in Hamburg we have those buses that go into the water, so it actually makes sense.
Yes, I've seen them. No brand. Perfectly fine. Vehicle type. That's a novel vehicle type, somewhat, but beautiful. Okay, number 2. What is a technology trend you were skeptical about, but later you embraced?
I would say everything about the technology of underground high-speed transportation. So basically Hyperloop, hard Hyperloop, etc. I was quite skeptical about it. Then we went to hard Hyperloop in Rotterdam, and I truly understand use cases. I truly understand why it makes sense. For instance, less maintenance, high safety, it better feels in the environment. So to me, that was eye-opening because I truly understand, you don't have to do it where everything exists already. But if you want to build new cities and not focus so much on roads as it is as today, then it could be a really cool solution.
Super interesting. I've seen some of the guys from Hard Hyperloop. I don't know if they were called this back then, a couple of years ago at a conference where they introduced their concept. And everybody was just staring at them like, what are these guys even talking about? I mean, we have, we already have sub-level transportation, but what's a hyper thing? So they really had a interesting vision and also technology that they wanted to pull off a couple of years ago, but it's great to see that this is advancing at that pace. Interesting. Okay. And can you also, that's number 3, Ronja, please name a startup that has impressed you recently and also why it has impressed you.
I think to me it's important, or I like those startups that actually solve a problem. Good example, and I don't want to do any bashing, but I use Flink and Getir and you name it, but do they really solve a problem? I don't know. And I am also not a big fan of all these platforms because now you asked me about why they something positive, and I made it into venting. But to me, it's everything where you actually use the app and it's like, hey, this is pretty cool. So I would use it again. But I think that's pretty straightforward. So
anything that's really helping you solve something. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, something that actually helps the process.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Now, if you think about the future for venture clienting specifically at DB Schenker, again, as we spoke last time, you told me there's a new branding on the horizon. Maybe it's already out, maybe not, I don't know. Can you give us a sneak peek or some update on this and what prompted the need for a new branding? Why do you change?
Absolutely. I love this question. So a month ago, we launched the brand Startup Terminal. So DB Schenker Startup Terminal. And I'm pretty proud of it. Happy to see people interested in our work, also having an external platform for it. At the end of the day, it doesn't change anything we're doing. So at the end of the day, it basically just gives us another platform to truly target our messages and our language towards the ecosystem that we want to tailor it to. And I think it helps us to strengthen our positioning internally and externally. Obviously, it is in line with all the other venture client units. So maybe there's a little bit of FOMO, but I really don't think so, because I truly see the benefit we have with our own brand. And the beautiful thing is we do it reverse, fake it till you make it, right? There are a bunch of companies, startups, venture client units, etc., that first have a fancy webpage and then start hiring people. And that's fair. I understand why you do it. But for us, we actually have everything already underlying. And so Startup Terminal is our way of moving forward to even further professionalize our activities. And it also, Schenker Ventures has been founded 2 years ago as the venture capital and venture studio vehicle of DB Schenker. It is part of our department, yet I understand that it gets confusing for everybody, for startups, for our colleagues, who does what. And so every now and then we also have to clarify. So I believe having now these two brands, one does the investment and does the new venture building, and the other one is actually doing the operational side with the core organization. I think this also helps to clarify.
It does, absolutely. And it clearly shows that you continue to make an impact for DB Schenker's innovation efforts. Startup Terminal, that's a pretty neat name. And you earlier in this podcast, you talked about that you and your colleagues need to see some scaling, at least thoughts, effort, or solutions or concepts from the startups you're working with. Not just deploy this to a city, but how can this, for example, be deployed on a global scale? Is it the same thing for DB Schenker? Is there also an even more global approach planned to roll out DB Schenker's Startup Terminal achievements and ambitions to even more countries, more people? Is there anything on the horizon?
So we constantly evaluate our activities and also where and how it makes sense to further push it. And here a little bit, the German way of doing things sometimes comes into place. So for instance, when you look at the US, I think I'm not sure if they actually need a venture client unit, simply because people in the US from their mindset are by default more open to collaborate with startups. Yeah. So at the end of the day, a startup is just another supplier, right? So do they actually need somebody who is the mediator between finding suppliers that have a more venture track, or is it just I'm not sure if they really do care about the difference, but those are questions that we're asking ourselves right now. So simply, I think with the establishment and implementation of the brand Startup Terminal, we now have a sound base to actually focus or also do our job more on a global scale. So what we're currently doing is understanding where and what makes sense, and then we would go from there. But definitely, I must admit, even though our department is called Global Innovation, you do business with the people and you like. And so, yet we have some pilots in the US or in Israel or in other countries in Asia, but simply because of capacity and time zones, it has been a focus on Europe, and we'd like to break that up and make it more global.
That makes perfect sense. And now, so we're already quite far into all the stories, Ronja. But before we wrap up, now that I have you here, maybe I can get just from off the top of your mind 3 recommendations for the listeners that they can take away with them. from this episode. Maybe we can do one from a corporate perspective. So, corporates that want to, establish, or just are starting out to establish venture clienting practices, what they should look out for. Same thing for the startups. We had a similar question at the beginning, but maybe one action recommendation for startups that, again, want to get in contact with you, or potentially, in different industries with any other large corporations. And then also one, again, from your personal experience or personal work ethics, whatever there is for the listeners to take away with.
All right, so let's start with the corporates. So first of all, if you have the means to establish a venture client unit, or call it whatever you like, somebody that takes it on their responsibility and accountability to foster innovative solutions into bringing them into the organization, then let's just do it, simply because I think it helps you as the organization to stay head to toe with competitors about innovations, technologies, etc. It helps startups to grow their business and helps the economy and society to, further collaborate, have that mindset, push also entrepreneurship in Germany and beyond, and on a global scale. So I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not going to share any numbers, but for DB Schenker, it has a tremendous also financial return. Not just that we have the latest technologies, but also that we can. In our own terms, can contribute to the P&L. All right, and then the second question was for startups. I think I mentioned this earlier, so make sure, two things. First of all, make sure you're actually solving a problem, and make sure you know your audience. By that, I mean know who's your champion inside of the organization. And then secondly, I just talked on Friday to a startup, and they weren't even aware that there is such thing as venture client units that dedicate their work and time towards helping startups get into the organization. And when you think about it, we now host the Venture Client Roundtable for the 5th time, and there are more than 70 companies are already part of the Venture Client Roundtable. So I would just say there's a bunch of companies that dedicate those people and resources to that work. So make sure your sales department in the startup team is also aware that there are people helping you with their best interest to push your solution into the organization. So this is to everybody who is in sales in the startup. Make sure you know how and where to tackle the organization.
That is super practical advice. Really great to hear for every startup out there that's interested in getting into contact. And that these even exist, I agree. I mean, if you're in your startup bubble, probably, or in your technology bubble, or in your Berlin, Hamburg, Munich, whatever community, maybe straight out of university, how would you know if nobody told you there is actually people in large organizations such as DB Schenker that care about this? So you need to tell them, you need to educate them. How should they know this is not being taught in the typical university lecture, I assume? That's a very, very practical advice. Good to hear.
Yes, and on a last note, personal advice. I mean, everybody has to run their own lives, right? But to me, I would say at the end of the day, those two: be bold and trust the process. Simply by meaning, for me, I have set a clear agenda of what I think as of today I want to achieve and I want to, do in my life, and I also pretty well know what I don't want to do. And so every time when I'm doing jobs or holding on projects, doing side hustles, etc., then I'm also asking myself, does this pay into my long-term goal? And if it doesn't, then I'm also happy to say no. And so at the end of the day, and then with that, it also helps me to not always, challenge, because I think we're people from first world. We tend to have always this, okay, am I on the right track? Challenge everything. Like, is this the right friend circle? Is this my right city? Is this, why did I study finance? Sometimes, I definitely have those moments where I'm like, okay, what am I actually doing? And then I take a deep breath and I'm just like, well, no, you're actually on the right track. So just keep on heading towards that direction, and that definitely helps me.
That is great advice. And having that said, if you look back on your professional career so far, I mean, there's a lot more to come. But so far, what do you think? Now, what would you say was your greatest innovation rockstar moment to date?
I think to me, it's just exciting to see what has happened in the past 12 years since I graduated from high school. Little did I know where I would have stand today. And so every year it just goes wilder and crazier, and I'm excited. I think it's just the beginning. So I'm quite excited what's going to happen.
A lot to come. All right. And with that, Ronja, thanks very much for the insights, for the advice, for sharing your experience with the audience. I'd say that's it for this episode. Thanks so much again for being my guest. It was really a pleasure to listen to you. And for everybody, if you want to get in touch with Ronja, I'm sure you found her on any major social media profiles or platforms, LinkedIn and the like. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. And excited for what comes for both of us.
All right. And to everybody listening or watching, if you enjoyed this episode, then simply leave us a comment on this episode or drop us an email at info@innovationrockstars.show. And as always, if you want to get in touch with my guests, simply check the socials. That's it. Thanks for listening. Take care, everybody. See you. Bye-bye.
That was Innovation Rockstar Ronja Stoffregen on Next Level Venture Clienting at DB Schenker. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Don't hesitate to reach out to us at info@innovationrockstars.show with your feedback, comments, or questions. And if you're hungry for more inspiring innovation stories, be sure to check out our website at www.innovationrockstars.show or browse to our Innovation Rockstars channel on all major podcast platforms.